back. By the time they got up to the camp, there was nobody there. They'd all taken off, but all the food was sitting right there that the Yankees had just cooked and were just about to eat. And so the rebels got to go have a really good breakfast because a lot better than what they normally had because the Yankees had been camped there for a while. So just to give you a little taste of what was going on.
All right, so the other thing, we want this to be as interactive as possible. I mean, we realize it's a presentation format, but don't hesitate to just ask a question or make a comment during any of this.
Tell us what you had for breakfast.
Tell us what you tweet it if you want, but yeah, we want this to be as interactive as possible. Frankly, we were excited about the idea of it, and then it was one of those things where the idea actually got better as we started doing it. Now, that said, we realized at the same time that this was a huge amount of work. And for example, the pioneer trek that we did to represent the 1847 Vanguard group that came across the plains with a lot of the Mormon pioneers, Brigham Young and others, that was an enormous amount of work. We had 12 people working on it. We were, doing a lot of interactive Google spreadsheet style work, and we'll explain a little bit more about that coming up. And we'll probably skip through some of these slides also, but just to give you an idea, I mean, it's exciting because we were able to work with a lot of different people, not only in the writing of it, but then also in sharing it. So it's exciting to see. We got a lot of neat press, and the Deseret News and others were excited about seeing this happening just right around the time of LDS General Conference. So it was just kind of an interesting kind of timing on some things. But we were, as Rob said earlier, one of the ideas here is that we try to match day for day when things were happening. So it gives you a feeling of the duration of things and also just the time of year. If it was, we did the Titanic, and if the Titanic, if the Titanic sank on, I can't remember now, but April something or other, the idea was to try and match the day and the time. Now, it's not always possible, and so we haven't been able to do it with all the reenactments, but it really does make a difference to kind of stretch it out. And that Pioneer Trek was tweeted. If you can, just to give you an idea of the kind of the scale of things, I think there were probably 10 or 15 tweets, sometimes 20 or more a day for 3 months. So we were well over 1,000 tweets with that one, and I mean, a volunteer was writing each one of those. So it's people wouldn't do that if there wasn't something in there, and it just kind of gets you inside of history, and it was exciting for that reason. But this is a good slide to kind of show, and I realize that this is very small, but we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the workflow of how we did this. Yeah, but question.
Quick question. Who's your audience? Like, who are you aiming for?
Okay.
Is this for students? Is this for just people? Like,
yeah. Yeah, I think that initially our audience was just anyone who was interested in history, and we just made it that broad. We had when we did the Battle of Gettysburg, we attracted some attention from some kind of academic type people. We had that's the other thing about Twitter that's kind of interesting is because you don't have to friend people, you get some really kind of interesting, spontaneous, like, how did you find me type things. And so we were approached by the Lyndon B. Johnson Presidential Library, Library of Congress, and a few other places that just kind of blew us away. We were just kind of excited to see the uptake and some of the larger organizations, like I'm trying to think of the academic magazine, the Chronicle of Higher Education did a little spot on us in their Wired Campus blog. So I mean, just neat stuff that that was the bigger organizations that were taking notice. But on a smaller level, and probably more importantly, we just had a lot of different people from all walks of life just doing little retweets, which is where they send the message back basically to their followers. And we didn't explain a lot about Twitter, just I guess for lack of time, but basically you can be following any number of people, and it's kind of a more loose type following than Facebook. I don't read everything from everyone that I'm following, but you basically can be following people, and when you find something interesting in your little group, you can retweet it, and then it goes to the people that are following you. So, just as an example, I have some silly, ridiculous number of people that I try and follow. It's right around 1,000, and then which is probably a little bit more than average. But I don't read everything. I don't read even half of everything that they tweet. But then there are about 700 or 800 people following me. So that's kind of how these things get shared, and that's how you get this kind of serendipitous, like, wow, you told someone and someone retweeted it, and and all of a sudden we get a call from the Library of Congress. So the audience question is a good question. And after the Battle of Gettysburg, we had some interest from a teacher named Carla Fetterman in Missouri. She taught an AP. She taught a few AP history courses, and one specifically that focused on Cold War history for a period of 6 weeks or so. And she asked us how we were doing everything we were doing, and we showed her, and then we kind of went from there. She took it and ran with it, and she, with her class, did the Cuban Missile Crisis. And that was really exciting to see someone else actually kind of run with the idea. And so we've included her in some of our other presentations and things. And so I'm going to switch over and let Rob make some comments about this. But even though it's really small, we'll give you a quick little feel for the workflow. We've kind of hinted at it, some of what we, some of how we put this together, even though we really didn't even know everyone we were working with. A lot of this was shared Google Docs and that kind of thing. So Rob will explain a little bit more.
All right. Yeah. So in terms of the actual organization of things, Carla in her class, she had a physical class that got together, every day or a couple times a week, and talked about things. And so a lot of stuff they could do just in person. Whereas if you're doing stuff remotely, then you're going to have some kind of mechanism to communicate. And so on several of the reenactments, we've used Google Groups to communicate with one another, to just kind of do some organizing in terms of people signing up for what characters they want to be, finding books, and we're doing some research on the Titanic. There's actually a book over in the library here on campus that was published in 1912. That's the year the Titanic sank. And it was published just about 6 months after the sinking of the Titanic, with a bunch of, kind of the testimony of the people that what it was that they reported happened to them. Anyway, it kind of blew me away that there's this 100-year-old book, 98-year-old book sitting there on the shelf that had all these awesome stories in it that we're able to get some stuff out, in that research. So once you've got kind of organized in terms of deciding who's going to do what, and everybody's got their sources, and people start actually hitting the research and reading through it, finding what's important. Spreadsheet's probably the best way to track this kind of thing, because you can see kind of like date and time in one or two columns, and then the actual message itself for each of the people that you're working on. And as you put the times out there, you can kind of make sure they fit each other. And then when you put the message in, you can put I think it'll zoom in on that. There's a little circle that's got an example of a little Excel code that you could use to, just a formula that'll tell you the length of a cell. And so the idea with that is you have Excel or whatever your spreadsheet is automatically tell you how long your your tweet is, so you don't run into problems